like your TV show with football.
Dog times.
Because of this YouTube channel, filmmakers are always asking me for advice on what kind of lights they should buy or what's a good starter kit for lighting. And even though I do think every job deserves its own special curated package, I do think that when it comes to the world of ultra low budge and DIY, you can definitely build yourself a kind of one-fits-all G&E package. And that's what we're gonna do today. So the kit that we're gonna be building today is gonna cost a little bit of bread because it's gonna be enough to fill out a small van. Now I've done quite a bit with my little minivan package, feature films, a ton of short films, feature-length documentaries, music videos, and even broadcast commercials. All of those jobs had one thing in common: little, tiny budgets. So this is why anytime there's an ultra low budget movie coming out of Hollywood, I watch it like a hawk because I want to know how they lit it. Our inspiration today is this movie called 18½, directed by Dan Mervish and shot by Ellie Schneider. This movie is 88 minutes long and they shot the entire thing in less than 3 weeks. It won 4 film awards and was nominated for 10 others. Back in February, the American Society of Cinematographers did a really great article on the making of this film. And the reason why we're referencing this movie is because they lit the entire feature film with only one truck. This is a real Hollywood movie with A-list actors and their entire G&E crew was only 3 people. This is totally dog times, and I absolutely love it. We're gonna use this film's lighting package to build our own lighting kit. And this is what I do. This is what I've been doing for the past 6 years. When I read articles like this or I watch the behind the scenes on any big Hollywood shows, I'm always paying very close attention and even taking notes to what kind of lights they're using and how they're using them. Because no matter how small your budget is, if you're strategic with the types of lights and modifiers that you choose, you will be prepared for whatever the universe throws at you. So let's see what 18½ had on the truck. A single Arri M18, 1 Source 4, 2 Lightgear light mats, a tungsten Chimera Trioletta kit, a Rotolight Neo 2 kit, and 2 Luxley Tyco 2x1 panels. And that's it. So here's the deal. These are all pretty industry standard, and I don't think anyone has $15,000 lying around to buy yourself an Arri M18. The whole point of this video is to look at the kind of lights they're using and figure out what we can afford with our ultra shoestring budget DIY wallet. And we're in luck because this movie is a very tiny package. To be honest, the amount of firepower on this movie is smaller than what I have in my minivan package. I mean, you can look at these BTS photos and just see how tiny the locations were that they were shooting in. As you'll notice, they even have a 6-foot Dana dolly. Seriously, this looks very similar to the jobs that I do. But as we look further at this movie, you can see they had enough light to not only battle the sun, but also to imitate moonlight. So let's start with their biggest light, which, good for us, it actually really isn't even that big of a light, all things considered. An Arri M18. And in this BTS photo, we can see them blasting it into a 6x6 Ultra Bounce. So they're clearly using this fixture to battle the sun, or to just be a key light in a small day exterior setup. And for nighttime, they're using it as moonlight. Now, I'm sure you've all heard by now, if you have something like the Aperture 1200D, well, there you go. There's your Arri M18. However, this is a little bit of an urban myth. So let's get into this. Here's the deal with the M18s. They are a high wattage HMI Fresnel fixture. And from a 3-meter distance in full flood, it will give you 890 foot candles. Keep in mind, that's at full flood, which is giving you its lowest amount of output. Meanwhile, a 1200D is only going to give you around 600 foot candles. It isn't until you attach its wide hyperreflector, then it will give you 960 foot candles from 3 meters. So this is where the rumor comes from, comparing the M18 at its lowest setting. And with the Aperture using a hyperreflector. That reflector dish is never going to give you the same amount of control as the M18's Fresnel. An Aperture also makes a Fresnel, the F10, but it doesn't allow for as much output as the hyperreflectors. But beyond that, the M18 has a 12-foot beam width versus the Aperture's 8-foot beam. What this means is that the M18 can cover a wider distance with the same amount of light. An even spread of 890 foot candles across the entire 12 feet. And keep in mind, that's 12 feet wide by 10 feet long. And as you narrow the M18's beam angle using the Fresnel, the output gets much higher. In its middle setting, you're getting 2,240 foot candles, and by the time it's at full spot, the M18 delivers 10,140 foot candles, versus the 1200D, which maxes out at around 7,000 foot candles at 3 meters with its narrow intensifier. And you still don't have the control of a Fresnel, because the F10 only gives half the output that the narrow reflector gives you. So you're starting to see one of the major benefits of a real HMI versus an LED monolight. The 1200D packs a punch, but only in an area of 8 feet or smaller. And also keep in mind the aperture is going to have a greater hotspot in the center of its beam because of its monolight LED design. But regardless of all of that, if you're balling on a budget, then yes, a 1200D would get you somewhat similar results to an Arri M18, if you're thinking of the M18 always being in full flood. But the reality is, even with its most narrow hyperreflector, the 1200D is still 45% less output than an M18. And it's only giving you that output because of its hyperreflectors. And let's not forget about the quality of the light. The SSI reading from the aperture spec sheet is less than 73, which isn't all that great. It's technically problematic. And keep in mind, the only way they get that rating of 73 is by comparing the light's spectral distribution to an industry standard source, such as the M18, which is going to render a much higher color fidelity, something in the range of the high 80s or low 90s. Because they are very good at emulating sunlight. They literally call their lights Arri suns. But again, the M18 does cost you $14,655, or you can rent one for $100 a day. So needless to say, yes, you get what you pay for. And I realize this may be way more intense than what you originally signed up for when you hit that play button, but I just don't want people thinking that a 1200D is the same as an Arri M18. Because they're not, and I hope that by explaining this, we can kind of shush the fairy tale that's been flying around. And I get it, I do it too, I love to believe in fairy tales as well. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter for us because we're balling on a budget and we don't like hot lights anyway. And realistically, we don't have the budget for generators. So despite the reality of the situation, we are still gonna be putting that 1200D in the van. Biggest light, check. And yeah, I would buy a 1200D versus renting an M18 for every job. Because the way I look at it, you're always going to use the 1200 every day you're on set, more than likely. Because it doesn't matter what the job is, in the low budget world, you're always going to pull your biggest light first. If you're doing interiors, it's gonna be outside, pushing through the windows. And if you're outside, well then you're gonna be using it like how they did on 18.5. But here's another thing, you don't always actually need lights for all your day exteriors. I do most of my exteriors with just rags. My workhorses are a 12x12 Ultra Bounce, an 8x8 poly silk, a 6x6 silent half grid cloth, or a 4x4 magic cloth, and a mirror board. It really just depends on how high or low your sun is in the sky. But keep in mind, I am shooting in sunny Los Angeles. If we look at the BTS from 18.5, we can see it was a pretty overcast day. My 12x12 bounce would do nothing for us out there. So when in doubt, just throw the biggest light in. Okay, the next one on the list is a Source 4. Now, I did a video a while back called Hollywood's Most Popular Tools Since 1992. I'll leave a link down below. It was all about spotlights and Source 4 Lecos. The gaffer I work with here in LA, shout out to David from Goodman Grip and Light, he loves Source 4s, he's got a van full of them. So if you don't know by now, a Source 4 Leco is a 750 watt tungsten light from the theater world. I'm sure you've all seen the Bowens mount spotlight mounts for LED lights nowadays. I have this one, it's made by Godox. It has a 19-degree lens. They're excellent for shaping the light and maximizing the amount of output you can get out of one Bowens mount light. And it limits the need for lots of extra stands and flags on your set. They're just awesome tools to have. So it makes sense that this movie would have at least one Source 4. Now, the real Source 4s will give you around 400 foot candles from a 3 meter distance. and that's with a 15-foot beam width, which is their 36-degree lens. It's important to note that a 36-degree spotlight mount for your little aperture light is not going to give you that same 15-foot beam. So you're starting to see the pattern here with hot lights versus LEDs. But what's cool about the LED spotlight mounts is that they are multiplying the output of light that your LED offers. So in the world of LED, a 36-degree spotlight mount almost gives you 3 times your normal amount of output. So if we're looking for a proper Source 4 equivalent, we need a Bowens mount light that is able to give us 150 foot candles without its hyperreflector. So you are still going to need something quite powerful, like an Aperture 300D Mark II, maybe a Godox 300 Mark II, or a Forza 300. But now, if you're like me and your spotlight mount has a narrower lens, such as 19 degrees, well, now it's going to give you nearly 7 times the amount of output. So you could get away with a little bit of a smaller light, like this SmallRig 220B. Just keep in mind that 19-degree beam angle on your LED light is going to have a much narrower beam width compared to a real Source 4. So my 19-degree spot is really only good for breaking up the background with shafts of light. And even if you were to get the 36-degree spotlight mount, your beam angle will still only be 6.5 feet, which is less than half what a real Source 4 offers. But here's the cool thing, if you're really tight on budget, you can get a real Source 4 Leica all day long on Craigslist or Facebook Market. But keep in mind, they're tungsten, so you're gonna need gels because they're not bicolor. The bulb may not be any good, so you'll have to replace that. They get very, very hot, and they're quite heavy, so you are going to need a solid combo stand to rig one of these guys. And it's important to note that most of the ones you'll find on Craigslist, they're going to be coming from a stage, so they're not going to be rigged with a proper mount for a combo stand, so then you'll have to modify it. So because of all those reasons, in my opinion, I think it's just better to spend the extra cheddar right out the gate and just get like a Forza 300B with the spotlight mount. It's going to be more convenient, more versatile, but ultimately much safer. And that's really my biggest concern with hot lights. I don't really care about how big and bulky they are. I'm more concerned with how unsafe they are. And that's a really big deal when you're talking about ultra low budget DIY projects. Because the jobs out here in LA that I've been the DP or the gaffer on, 90% of the time, they are full of safety violations. Unless David is our gaffer. If David's there, then we know, okay, everything's gonna be tip-top shape. But mostly, if he's not around, that means it is the wild, wild west. So if having a van full of LED lights is going to help make things a tiny bit safer, then I'm all for it. So for me, on this, I'm putting a Forza 300B and my 19-degree spotlight in the van. Obviously, you can choose whatever 300 light you would like, but I do think if it's an LED light, you should get something that's pulling at least 300 watts. And realistically, I think you should go with bicolor just because it's going to be more versatile. And especially if you have a narrow spot like mine is, you know, the 19 degree, it's giving you 7 times the output versus the 36 degree is only giving you 3 times. Or you could meet somewhere in the middle and get one of those 25 or 26 degree ones. It's completely up to you. I'm just giving you all the options here. And I absolutely love these spotlights because in a pinch, you can use them for room tone. You can shape the light with the little shutter leaves and just blast it at the ceiling. And this can really work well, especially depending on whatever color your ceiling happens to be. But if your LED is bicolor and you own one of these, a Sekonic 800, which is a color meter, okay, everyone here knows I talk about these all the time, but if you're new here, I am big into using this thing. And this is why I like using bicolor lights, because in this situation, if I do have the Forza 300B hooked up to the spotlight mount and it's blasting at the ceiling, I can just walk over and check the color temp and just dial it in since the light is bicolor and just make it any Kelvin temperature that I want it to be for my skin tones. And it doesn't matter what color the ceiling is. So by looking at 18.5, I'm guessing they use the Source 4 how I've often used them, which is to blast shafts of light as accent lighting on the background walls and in certain areas of the set. So they're quite powerful, they're easy to blast through windows and shoot light far across the room without it spilling everywhere. I love using them with haze for building a dramatic look with lots of shafts of light. I do that all the time. It's always a crowd pleaser. David did that on the For Love of God pilot that I shot. I mean, they're like the #1 trick for adding more contrast in your shot. It's like I say in my old video, they really are the Swiss Army knife of Hollywood. You can't go wrong with having at least one in the van. It makes complete sense why they had at least one on this movie. And to tell the truth, I actually have quite a few different options and different sizes in my own package. So yeah, get yourself at least one of these 300-watt Bowens mount lights. I would suggest getting bicolor and get whatever degree of spotlight mount you want. If you start with one, you're good to go. I mean, on this movie, they only had one, so. Next up, 2 Lightgear light mats. Now, you guys know I love my light mats. I actually do have one real Lightgear light mat. It's a little 2x2. I'm actually using it right now in this setup. I built a kind of weird, janky book light here for the little tiny talking head studio. I love the light mats just because of how small they are. You can fit them anywhere. They're super versatile. And a lot of you guys know I also have a little 1x2 RGBW light mat made by a company called Falcon Eyes. I say get the largest size you can afford and at least get bicolor. And I think it's a good idea to have 2 different sizes because as I showed in my previous breakdown video, I use the light mats all the time for room tone. What's cool about the Falcon Eyes is it actually offers XY coordinates, which is a pretty advanced feature for a low budget light. Because with my trusty Sekonic 800, I can pull up the XY coordinates of any other light on set and then walk over to my Falcon Eyes light mat and quickly match to it. It's just so much faster than messing around with CCT and then having jump back and forth with the tint. You don't have to do any of that. You just put in the XY and it's done. And it's a pretty impressive little light mat, the little Falcon Eyes. It's awesome. It's the RX818. I'll have links to all these things down below, and it runs at full output off of V-mount. The only downside to the Falcon Eyes is it is a little small, and therefore it's about half the output of my Lightgear light mat. But that's why I have both, you know. I've used the Falcon Eyes for car interiors, small recording studios. They're just awesome. And in this BTS shot from 18.5, I can see a Lightgear light mat with its little Velcro softbox on back here. And it looks like it's being used in a back cross key type setup because it's behind the actors. And it's high up, it's cranked down, so it's clearly being motivated by the ceiling house lights or what would be overhead lights. They're just great for getting into areas where other lights really can't fit. And I prefer using a light mat over something like an Astera Titan tube rig, because as cool as the tubes are, the reality is when you start rigging them together, it gets really heavy and they're still not as powerful. You would need 6 Titan tubes to equal the output of my one Lightgear light mat. And 6 tubes are gonna be way heavier than a little light mat. And that's the greatest benefit of the light mats. They are little featherweights. And that's another important thing when building your little DIY shoestring budget kit. You wanna stay nimble and efficient. So I don't really care what brand you get, just get yourself 2 light mats. I like my combo of having 1 bicolor and 1 RGBW, but I definitely think you need at least bicolor. And I only say that because they're such a versatile tool. To only get the daylight temperature, I feel like you're just hurting the potential of its versatility. I mean, I get it. If you plan on using it just as your key light, then yeah, you would obviously want the most output and get the daylight only version. But for our package, yeah, we're not gonna rely on these little light mats to be our key light, even though you totally can, and I certainly have done, and you saw it in my last breakdown. Next up is the Tungsten Chimera Triolet Kit. Now, I had to look this one up because I had never heard of this before. Or if I had, it was not memorable. But as you can see, it's a pretty old school lighting kit, but take note that this thing has a 500-watt bulb with a decent sized softbox. So I look at this thing, and my brain instantly thinks of the Forza 500 with a 4-foot light dome. However, theirs is tungsten, so be sure you get yourself a pack of gels for your Forza. Now, some of you might rather use something like an Aperture 600X. However, I prefer my Forza with gels because it is 12% brighter. Now, it doesn't matter what you choose as long as it's at least 500 watts, right? And it's going to complement your 1200D. And if we look at these shots from 18.5, and we recall that they were filming in wintertime in New York, and we saw how overcast the skies were, they're clearly pushing level in from outside with the M18. And when you do that, you need something powerful enough on the inside to complement that big light. So you go 500 watts and you use the softboxes because we're trying to stay nimble because we're filming on location. We don't have the luxury of pulling away walls and ceilings, and these locations are tiny. So if we start building frames, our tiny location is going to get crowded very, very quickly. And I have an option instead of using frames that I do all the time, which we'll talk at the end when we talk about modifiers. Anyways, let's stay on track here. Get yourself something like the Forza 500 and a 4-foot dome, throw it in the van. Up next is the Rotolight Neo 2 kit, which is another one I had to look up. I'm familiar with the company Rotolight, but I definitely wasn't sure of this exact fixture. And as you'll see, this is a pretty interesting kit. At first glance, it looks pretty old school because they're round, they're only bicolor, they're very tiny. I mean, this shows it on the top of a DSLR. The build quality doesn't really look all that great, let's be honest. But what's crazy to me is that one of these costs $340. But then I found out that high price tag is because each one of these little lights gives you 21 foot candles from 3 meters, which is more output than 2 Astera Titan tubes. And the kit comes with 3 of them. And it is kind of cool that they're round because the kit also comes with little round diffusions. So I'll bet anything they were using these little guys for eyelights. So my first thought is what I use for eyelight, which I'm using right now, the little Roscoe dash with the dot. But that thing is only 5 foot candles. So you would need 4 Roscoe dashes to equal one of these Rotolights. So that is never gonna work. You know, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Honestly, I'm really intrigued by this light kit. And if you buy the whole kit, it's only $470 right now, which seems crazy to me because they're selling one for $340, but you can get the whole kit for $470. So it's obviously a way better deal to just buy the kit and you get all the accessories and stands with it. This is actually really unique because it's small, it's round, and it's pretty powerful for its size. And the fact that it's made by Rotolight, I think it's fair to say that we can trust its colorimetry. The only thing I can think of that I would remotely have close to these little guys is something like the little Forza 60B with a tiny dome on it. But I don't have a dome that small, so it's still gonna be a lot bigger. And honestly, one Forza 60B is only 7 foot candles brighter than one of these little Rotolights. So I can see why they use these. These are very, very interesting. I might put these on my radar and start watching for these in the secondhand market. And on 18.5 in the article, it talks about how they taped these Rotolights to the ceilings. And I mean, it makes sense. Could you imagine having something as bright as a Forza 60B taped directly to the wall or the ceiling? I mean, essentially, they were using them as little tiny round light mats because one of these is a little over half the output of my Falcon eyes. So that is awesome. I mean, if you consider how small they are, the fact that they're perfectly round, and with that incredible output, they're definitely pretty unique. And don't forget that Rotolight is a pretty industry standard company, so again, the colorimetry is probably gonna be top notch compared to like some cheapo brand you find on Amazon. Last one is 2 Luxley Tyco 2x1 panels, which are pretty powerful RGB panels, outputting 160 foot candles from 3 meters. Now my Nanlite Mix Panel 150 can beat that. It sits at 173 foot candles in hard boost mode. The downside to that is the fan is pretty loud on that Nanlite when it's in hard boost. For all of my aperture guys out there, your 300C sadly is not gonna cut it. You would definitely need the Nova 600s. Those give you 182 foot candles at 3 meters. And on 18.5, they used these panels for the fire effect and took full advantage of all of those cool RGB special effects modes. So definitely get yourself a couple large RGB panels. Ideally, I would go with companies like Aperture, Godox, Nanlite. You know, I wouldn't really stray too far there in terms of low budget options. I love the Nanlite Mix Panel. I've done a full review on it. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. If you really want the most bang for your buck in terms of a awesome RGB WW panel, I also reviewed a big, huge one made by Godox, so I'll put that video down below if you're new here as well. And in my testing, it definitely blew away Aperture, Nanlite, all of them, but it is fairly large. It's a big boy. Okay, so let's keep in mind, this 18.5 movie was a period piece, right? It's supposed to take place during the time of Nixon, you know, so that was like, what, the 70s? So notice they weren't using tubes or anything like that. They didn't have anything like the Astera Nix bulbs. If you wanted to pad out this kit a little more and be more prepared for modern shoots, I do think some tubes are beneficial. Here's a great example I saw where this show could have used a little tube. This shot right here, you can see it's just clipped all to hell. I mean, clearly this was what they were going for on this film. I mean, all the windows, all the highlights are very bloomy and blown out and clipping. Someone like me, I'm pretty anal about that, so I would have definitely wanted a little baby tube for this desk lamp, and I could have dialed it in and had it set to any color temperature because all the tubes are RGBW. I mean, they're awesome. I have a full set of 2-foot tubes and the 1-footers. I sold all of my 4-footers a while ago because they just don't work that much. I don't know. I think the 4-footers are a little extreme. I mean, unless you're doing a ton of music videos, and you guys know I don't really play around with music videos too much. I think it just depends on the style you're doing. Maybe you would need 4-foot tubes, but either way, you need some sort of collection of tubes. I just think they're awesome for, you know, replicating practicals. I mean, they certainly could have used it on this desk shot, in my opinion. And the other thing is the Astera bulbs. Now, these bad boys are not cheap, okay? These are very pricey, but as you can see, it's one full kit. You're not gonna go wrong. I use those on almost every interior job I do. And I started out with the Aperture B7Cs, and I loathe those things. I hate them so much. For one, they don't look like light bulbs, they look like aperture bulbs. That's the first problem with them. And also, because of the huge weird size, they don't really fit in all areas that normal light bulbs would go. But the biggest pain in the ass is I learned on a hotel job where we're shooting in a hotel, we were hanging them upside down. I just swapped out all the hotel bulbs with the aperture bulbs. And by the end of the day, all of the ones that were hanging upside down all day, they were all burnt up. They burnt up. So I don't know if it's a poor design or maybe the way that it was inset into the ceiling, it was like generating heat all day. I just don't know. But they burnt up, and that was a bummer to me. I just was like, you know, they're too finicky. The way that you can control them, they always were a pain in the ass connecting to the app. I don't know. I had a hell of a time with them, so I was so glad to get rid of them, just get them out of here, and I went with the Astera bulbs, and I don't feel too bad about that decision. I love the Astera bulbs. The only problem with the bulbs, again, is the app. So these apps, everyone praises the apps, and all I do on this channel is talk shit about every app. So I think all the companies really need to, like, you know, let's keep advancing the apps, man. But I think the tubes and the bulbs are something that you should consider for more modern shoots. But again, even on this shoot, I think they could have benefited from not only the tubes, at least a little 1-footer in there on the desk, but also definitely they could have just benefited from Astera bulbs all around. If you look at this restaurant shot, I mean, everything is so clipped out. It's pretty gnarly. Again, it's the style of the show, you know, they were just embracing that. But if you had, you know, bulbs that you could control, you'd be in a little bit better of a world. And again, I'm not knocking this film. I love it. I think it was a great watch. I love the look and tone of everything. I think everyone that did it was very talented. It's just, you know, it's my personal aesthetic. I'm not like, anytime things start clipping out, I get super hyper sensitive of it. And, you know, it just goes down to like what you have OCD with. Like right now, this keyboard back here has been lit up the whole time, right? So I just say, well, let it go. Who cares? So I'm sure that's what they did on that movie too. They're like, we don't have dimmers, little hand squeezers for every little practical bulb in here. They certainly didn't have Astera bulbs. So they just said, you know, they just embraced it. So again, you know, you do what you do. But I'm just telling you guys, you know, if you want like a super versatile kit, once you get these base items, then I think I would branch out a little bit and get you some tubes, get you some controllable bulbs. Let's talk about modifiers. I strongly suggest you get yourself some type of breakaway frames, at least one 8x8 for outdoors. If you can splurge for a 12x12, just go for it. And there's plenty of options out there for the breakaway frames, because I know most of you guys are like me, you're in a little van or something. Even if you're in a little ProMaster, you know, you're gonna have to get breakaway frames. Like these Matthews ones, they look good. They're very similar to the ones I use for modern studio equipment. I just love moderns because of how their breakaway frames work. They're very modular, and my kit allows me to have multiple different sizes at once. So what I mean by that is I can go all the way up to a 12x12, or I can do 2 8x8s, or I can do 3 6x6s, or break it all down and have like 4 or 5 4x4s. But if you're like in a small SUV or something, or even a little car, you can't go wrong with Matthews 4x4 road flag kits. So at least get something like this to start out with. And if you can't splurge for that, then definitely consider these 24x36 road rags, which I absolutely love. I have 2 different sets of these, the small ones and the 24s. And then after that, I would say get yourself at least 2 floppies. And if you can't splurge for floppies, just start out with what I use here in the studio, a sound blanket, right? And then you just T-bar it off of a C-stand. Now, I use Modern Studios WAG flags. This is what I was hinting about earlier in the video. They work great indoors for tiny locations where it's hard to get frames in and out, or they're excellent for low ceilings. I also recommend getting an Ultra Bounce, hopefully an Ultra Bounce floppy. That's what I have. I use at least 1 floppy, but usually both, and my Ultra Bounce flop every day I'm on the job. It doesn't matter what we're shooting. Doesn't matter for outdoors, indoors, nighttime, daytime. Those 3 items get used all the time. You use the floppies to control the contrast, and a lot of times I just use the bounce for my fill. Okay, now let's talk diffusion rags, because I get this question all the time as well. When you're first starting out, just get yourself 3 different levels of diffusion. You don't need to go crazy when you're first starting out your rag set. And yes, I do think every DP should have their own little collection of rags. I've told this story a million times, but way back when, maybe like in the beginning of my cinematography days, we're going back to like 2017, 2018, I was the camera PA for a little HBO short that was shot by the legend Carlo Mendoza. He had a little duffel bag he brought with him on set, and he had tons of rags in there. So yes, I think it is a pretty good idea for DPs to have your own little set of rags that you like to use. Even David here, when he's my gaffer, he loves that I have rags, because then that's one less thing he has to worry about getting, rentals on. This is why I love shopping on modernstudioequipment.com. This is not an ad. I am not a direct affiliate with Modern. I just love them. I use all their products. But why I love their website when I'm shopping for rags is because they tell the amount of light loss that each rag offers. So here's the deal. You really just need a light diffusion, something in the middle, and then a fairly heavy one. Okay, so for example, you could get a silent quarter grid or a highlight, which both of those are about as light as you can get in terms of diffusion. And then after that, maybe get something in the middle of the road, like a basic white artificial silk. And then for like your workhorse, maybe get something like a half soft frost or a magic cloth, right? And you really just gotta kind of do your own research on this, start paying attention to what people are talking about in podcasts and on breakdowns and stuff. Look around on Modern's website, but I would definitely start your rag kit with these ideas in mind. My rag inventory is a little insane. It definitely got out of control during my gaffer days, but this is my current inventory for rags, all right? I don't regret it one bit, because even on jobs where I'm the DP, again, it's one less thing we have to rent. On bigger jobs, you can add a little bit to your day rate depending on what you bring as your kit. And again, like I said, David just loves it because he brings the frames and I bring the rags. And I look at my diffusion rags the same way I look at the diffusion filters that I put in front of my camera lens, right? I mean, the more you work and the more you use them, you just figure out which ones you like to lean on. And David's got some really cool ones. They're called Broca or something like that. It's like a big rainbow cloth. I mean, there's so many different options out there. It can get pretty gnarly, okay? So try not to get lost down the rabbit hole. There's no need to go crazy, right? Just think light, medium, heavy, right? Just think of the 3 base ingredients you need. Because honestly, you're never, you're not gonna show up on a job and be like, hey, and roll out 20 different rags, and then they're gonna be looking at you like, oh, I don't know, dude, choose one. You know what I mean? You just need to think light, medium, heavy based upon how the sun is that day or how the clouds are that day. You gotta think kind of practical about it. Also keep in mind that anything larger than a 6x6, you really need to follow proper protocols when it comes to safety, such as tying the frames down and using plenty of sandbags on your stands. Okay, you've been warned, all right? I hear horror stories all the time from guys out here in LA. They were on a job that was shooting out in the desert using big frames, and then they turn into big sails, and yeah, you can do some very serious damage in a very short amount of time. You don't want to get blackballed just because you didn't think to tie down a diffusion frame. So use these things with caution. If you're indoors, then it's a different story. Go crazy. But outdoors, you gotta be more realistic about the reality of what you're working on. All right, so that's gonna do it. I hope this was helpful. It was helpful for me. I love doing shit like this. You know, what the coolest part about this to me was how low budge this movie 18 and a half really was. You know, when I first read that article, I was like, this is totally dog times. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because all of these items are super accessible for us. Thank you for watching. If you are new here, you know, consider doing all the stuff that new people do on new channels that watch it till the end. I want to give a shout out to this month's Patreon producer, which is a Cooler production company. Check out the Patreon for more videos like this. We go super in depth over there. This is what we do every week. For now, that is a wrap. Keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. Yeah, but this will help. Now bring this right here, double break his face.
And we need to raise that. It's not even going through the...
That's fine. We're gonna double break it anyways.